Hello everyone and welcome to another Muffin video. Before we dive in here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell and drop a like on the video too if you are enjoying the content. Don't forget to join our Discord server as well if you're not already there. We've also activated our channel membership now, which comes with all kinds of perks from video shoutouts to personalized help and more, so check that out if you're interested in joining. And as well, a reminder that from now on, all comments on every video will be automatically entered into our weekly giveaways. Winners will be randomly selected by our bot and announced every Monday. So good luck and let's get this started. So we've finally arrived at the first class change for Acolyte, and that is Oracle. So Oracle actually is an interesting class because while it is still a dual spec healer and DPS, and you will still obviously be expected to heal, Oracle actually has a surprising amount of DPS potential. However, you will not be getting any new healing skills added to your pool, and all added skills are DPS focused, so that's one thing you have to understand with this class moving forward. All of your heals are going to be in your base class, and like I said, you will still be expected to heal, but Oracle is... all the new skills you get in Oracle will be DPS focused. So I want to say at the start, I will not be going over the healing spec again. So if you're looking at how to heal effectively, please check my beginning guide to Acolyte as I go into detail on the healing build there. I will however highlight a couple things you should know with regards to mounts and talents when I cover those sections in this video that has changed compared to the pre-class change Acolyte. So, and just another reminder that I personally don't main an Oracle, so I've put this information together from trusted community sources, and again I want to especially thank Demi for putting together yet another extremely informative Reddit guide linked in the description below. So thank you again, Demi, making this great Oracle guide possible. So let's take a look then at Oracle from the perspective of DPS, as this is the main change when class changing from Acolyte to Oracle. So let's start as always with the skills. We have the core skill, which is Shadow Lash, and the entire basis of this class is all on shadow damage. And before I even start going over the skills, you'll see Shadow Lash, Flowing Darkness, Shadow Mystery, Shadow Pain, Shadow's Embrace, Void Torrent. So you can see the devs had a very clear understanding that what kind of vibe they wanted out of this class. This is a shadow energy class, and everything about this class centers around shadow energy. Now, the main core skill in this class change is Shadow Lash, which is a channeling type ability, which means it'll continuously deal damage. You'll see here when it casts, and the next group of enemies here, you'll see exactly what I mean. Once you start channeling, you have a blue bar underneath your HP bar. That is the channeling timer of the ability, and when it expires, then you have to cast the core skill again. So that's why this is going to be a build centered around the core skill and as well around channeling, you know, speed increase and damage increase, etc. So just keep that in mind as we proceed through these skills here. So let's read Shadow Lash. So Shadow Lash is a channeling type, channels shadow energy to continuously attack the target, dealing shadow damage, and while dealing damage, there is a 50% chance to summon a Shadow Touch. Up to 2 of them can exist simultaneously, reduces healing effect, and the Shadow Touch deals 50% of Shadow Lash's damage per second for 5 seconds. And additionally, you can see here in the promotion details that, in fact, you get additional benefits from these Shadow Touches here. For example, every time a Shadow Touch deals damage, you'll also increase the Shadow Lash damage, and as well, you can also get an additional Shadow damage attack to the target, and so on. So that is very nice. There's a synergy built into the core skill where its own mechanic boosts itself up in damage. So keep these Shadow Touches in mind. As you channel the damage, you have these Shadow Touches which summon, which will affect some of these other skills as we get to them. So that's the core skill. Moving on, we have the first tactical skill here, which is Flowing Darkness. Now, Flowing Darkness is pretty easy to understand. We just established this is a channeling type class with a channeling core skill, and here we have upon casting increased channeling speed by 60% for 7 seconds. Gee, I wonder why this is good for this build. So this is obviously a very important skill. It increases your channeling speed, plus you have this added bonus of additional skill damage increased by 22%. So this is a very, very good skill for this build and will increase your damage a lot. So definitely what I would call a no-brainer skill to include in this build. Next up we have Shadow Mystery. So Shadow Mystery summons a Shadow Mystery to attack enemies in the target area. So this is an AoE ability and it deals a lot of damage every 1 second for 6 seconds. Plus each summon of Shadow Touch, which as you remember the Shadow Touch is summoned by the core skill, increases the damage of the next Shadow Mystery by 5%. So what this does is it basically every time you have these Shadow Touches spawned by the Shadow Lash ability, it's going to increase the next time you cast this by, since you can summon 2 Shadow Touches, up to 10%, which is a nice little boost. So that's going to always pretty much be active. And you can see here as well, while the Shadow Mystery exists, increase the number of Shadow Touches that can exist simultaneously by 1. So I think you can even have up to 3 of them, which is quite nice. So that's how that works. A very nice synergy with the main core ability, and as well getting a damage boost from the Shadow Touches that you summon from the Shadow Lash core skill. So that's another integral tactical skill part of this build, Shadow Mystery. And now finally we have Shadow Pain. So Shadow Pain, upon casting, make all enemies take shadow damage equal to a percentage every 1 second for 7 seconds, and each damage dealt for the duration increases all damage they take from you by 3% up to 5 stacks, which is another nice bonus. So this is basically a single target multi-hit shadow damage output, which is nice if you have any abilities that trigger on number of shadow hits taken. So that's something to keep in mind as we transition into passive skills after, and as well this nice bonus of having an additional stacking damage increase up to 5 stacks. So this is going to be 15% damage increase as a potential here. So again, a very nice tactical skill here and a perfect synergy for this build. So that is now the core skill plus 3 tactical skills, Shadow Lash, Flowing Darkness, Shadow Mystery, and Shadow Pain. This will be your best in slot for Oracle DPS right here. And now we start going over the passive skills. And again, everything basically sinks into all these core skills here, and is just going to further increase the damage and further increase the damage. So first up we have Shadow's Embrace. So let's take a read of this. When dealing core skill damage, there's a 30% chance to gain the Shadow's Embrace effect for 4 seconds. During Shadow's Embrace, increase all skill damage by 31.5%. So very simple synergy right here. I don't need to explain this too deeply. You have an ability that has a percentage chance whenever you deal your core skill damage, which as we know is a channeling type ability which deals damage multiple times, so you have a real chance to trigger this often. It's just going to increase all your skill damage by a large percentage. So very nice damage increase to the build. And next up, we have Void Torrent. Now remember I said we can have a skill that benefits from dealing multiple hits of shadow damage? Here it is right now. So Void Torrent, for every 10 hits of shadow damage dealt by the core skill to the target and surrounding enemies, deal shadow damage equal to a large percentage of shadow damage, and can only trigger once every 3 seconds. Now of course this does only trigger off hits done by the core skill, not by tactical skills. However, any skills that we have that, increase channeling speed and the frequency of which the channeling hits is going to definitely affect this damage a lot, because you can see here once every 3 seconds you'll deal a lot of damage here. So this is a nice synergy with a fast channeling core skill and is another important part of the build. So we have Shadow's Embrace, Void Torrent, and now the third passive skill, which is Shadow Eruption. So let's take a look at Shadow Eruption and understand why it's so good. Each time Shadow Lash deals damage, there is a 45% chance to deal an additional percentage of Shadow Lash's damage as shadow damage to enemies around the target. Plus, oh my, increase Shadow Lash damage by 51.6%. So a very, very nice increase to core skill damage here. Over a 50% increase to Shadow Lash damage, which is massive. Plus you have this added benefit here. Because Shadow Lash itself is a single target skill, you have this additional benefit to have a percentage chance to deal additional damage as an AoE. So this is a very, very nice passive skill Shadow Eruption, and a very important part of this build to not only start dealing more AoE damage out of your single target core skill, but also to supercharge the damage it deals by over 50%, which is pretty massive, let's be honest. So next up we have Void Mark, which as you can see is yet another ability that is triggered on number of hits from the core skill damage. So now you're understanding why it's so important to get your channeling speed as fast as you can in order to get all these additional hits. So every 6 hits of core skill damage to the current target applies the Void Mark effect for 4 seconds up to 5 stacks, and each Void Mark stack increases your skill damage to the target by 6.75%. That means over 30% at max stacks, and if you're channeling your core skill fast enough, then you'll pretty much have this active most of the time. So again, this is just a very nice skill damage increase, over 30% additional skill damage increase simply from channeling your core skill. So a very nice passive skill that greatly increases your overall damage output. Again, just as a reminder that anything that states just skill damage will affect all of the damage output of your tactical skills, core skills, and passive skills altogether. Now finally we have the last passive ability here, which is going to be a ability that we had also in Acolyte, which is Executor. So Executor, or Executor, however you wish to say it, it is basically a trade-off of increasing your skill damage by a large percentage in exchange for reducing your healing output. Now, while we're in our DPS spec, we obviously don't care about reducing the healing output, so then we'll just basically take that free skill damage increase and enjoy it very much, thank you. So basically that's how this works. You don't heal in this spec anyway as your DPS in this DPS output spec, and then you get this huge damage increase. So that's how that works. So just in summary, this is the full best-in-slot DPS loadout for Oracle. That's everything you need to see with regards to the skills. And now next up, let's take a look at the talents. Now in the talents, I'm also going to show the new talents, or the upgraded side talents that you would use for healer as well. But as a DPS, you're going to be running the new talent loadout, which is Power of Shadows. And in the Power of Shadows, you're going to be taking, very simply, full left side. So full left side is what you would take here, and let's understand why. So first off, we have Shadow Summoning. Within 8 seconds of entering battle, increase the summoning chance of Shadow Touch by 20% and channeling frequency by 50%. So no brainer, as you might understand, we have an increase to channeling frequency, which is very nice, and an additional chance to summon Shadow Touches, which not only deal damage themselves, they also increase the damage of the core skill, and additionally the damage of our second tactical skill, which was Shadow Mystery. So very nice ability here. Next up we have Accelerated Channeling, which is 30 seconds after the start of battle, increase channeling frequency by 15% until the end of battle. Again, very straightforward to understand why this is so good for DPS output, as the more channeling of the core skill, the more damage output, and the more it triggers the passive skills that require a certain number of hits of core skill damage to take effect. So next we have Amplify the Shadow. When summoning or refreshing Shadow Touch, increase shadow damage by 4% for 6 seconds up to 5 stacks. So a nice increase to shadow damage here, which is going to be very beneficial to our overall damage output. Anything that increases elemental damage scales very nicely. And then finally we have Void Blessing. Each time shadow damage is dealt to the current target, there is a 5% chance to trigger Void Torrent. So Void Torrent was... Sorry, Void... my brain shut down for a second. Void Torrent is the... I'll just show you quickly. Void Torrent was this second passive skill here, which you can see here was this chance to deal a large percentage of damage, shadow damage, to all targets in an AoE. So as you can see here, this Void Blessing increase, basically gives a 5% chance to trigger Void Torrent anytime you deal shadow damage. So that's a very nice RNG type increase to your damage output. Sorry, I was like for a second, wait, Void Torrent? Yeah, I remember now. This is what happens when you don't main a class. You sometimes forget things in the moment. So that's how you will spec out your Power of Shadow full left side. And then as far as the talents that you would run, you're going to run not these two, as this is what was previously said, but you would run Zealous Burden for the crit rate increase, and you would also run Lightning Reflex for the determination increase. So this is what you would run. You would run your full left side power of Shadow, plus Zealous Burden, plus Lightning Reflexes, which is going to be a nice DPS increase for you. Now, one thing that you need to note, if you are going to be playing healer, which you should be, well, let me rephrase that, when you're going to be playing healer as an Oracle, you actually will not use the new talent disc. So when you switch to your healing spec, you're still going to use the Power of Light as your main talent disc, and using the same build that I've shown on the previous Acolyte video, which again I do recommend you check out if you're looking for a more detailed guide specifically to healing. And then you would use this with Healing Magic, which is a very nice talent disc which increases your healing output, plus you would also equip this, which one was it? Sorry, Coral Vanguard, which is going to increase your reciting time, which is related to this original Power of Light. Because like I said, you will be running the class change 0, the Acolyte skills, while you're in your healing spec. So that's what you need to keep in mind. So now with skills and talents out of the way, let's transition now to stats. Now the first thing you need to know is that the stats requirement are going to be extremely similar to Acolyte. A quick note, do not pay any attention to the numbers you see here. This is simply a much higher level class change 2 healer in effect here, so don't pay too much attention to this. But anyway, what you need to know is the same as Acolyte. You should have your crit and determination balanced as high as you can get. Now in class change 1, it's going to be much easier to balance these two stats, since at class change 1 with Icicle gear, you can start recasting your gear for determination. In pre-class change in Acolyte, you don't have access to recasting for determination, so your only source of determination is pretty much going to be in your Melomon moves. Now we have an additional source of determination, so it's going to be much easier to get that achieved balance. Accuracy as well is somewhat less important for this class. For both healing and DPS output, you are still going to want to keep it, I guess, around 100%, just so when you're running your healing spec, you don't get too many misses on your core skill, which triggers the passive healing effects. Once you have your crit and determination balance, your accuracy around 100%, then you should be going into haste, which is very important both for your DPS and your healing output. Haste, as you can see here, also for those who don't remember, increases your channeling speed as well. So for our DPS output, which is based on how quickly we can channel the core skill, this will be a nice increase. So haste is important, crit, determine, accuracy, then haste, followed up by mastery and attack. And once again, crit damage does nothing for a healer, so I would advise against investing in it. So basically, because you have a dual spec as a healer and DPS, you should try to avoid, where possible, only investing in skills that affect your, investing in skills that only affect your DPS, as opposed to investing in skills that affect both your healing and DPS together, because that's way more efficient. If you can power up the skills, the stats that affect both your DPS and healing together, that's going to be the best approach, and it's going to save you resources, it's going to save you time, it's going to save you a lot of things just by getting the balanced stats that affect both of your specs together, instead of like supercharging one stat, for example like crit damage, that doesn't actually do anything in your healing spec. So that's stats. And one other thing that is added into the class change 1 mix is going to be mounts. So mounts, you need to basically know, all you need to basically know is the best in slot for you is going to be Toby. Now Toby is a very nice mount for healers, as his opening skill increases the character's attack by a large percentage for 33 seconds. So this is a very nice ability because, as we know, attack increases your healing, which is going to be very nice to increase your healing output. So once again, we are investing in a mount that's going to both increase your DPS and your DPS spec and still increase your healing output. So Toby is by far the best for both your DPS and healing spec, and you should be using all of your available shards on Toby when possible. Arguably the best damage dealing, the best mount for damage dealing in class change 1 would be Rock, but the problem is when you take into consideration stickers, for example, it's just not really feasible to build 2 entire complete sets of stickers, as these stickers are per mount. So you just want to stick to one main mount, and that for you is going to be Toby. So last but not least, we do have our Melomon, and honestly, these are going to be the same as they were in Acolyte. So for DPS, you're going to run your main as Demon Hound, and for your healing spec, you're going to run your main as Snow Leopard. For moves, like I said in the previous video, all you need to understand with moves is you're going to use moves as a way to balance your stats based on the recasting and mounts and other sources that you have in order to achieve the desired results. So you'd obviously run healing out a healing effect on the defensive slots, and then the rest of the slots will be whatever you need in order to get the desired stat targets. So whether that's more determination, whether it's more crit, whether it's more haste, whether it's more mastery, etc., that's what you will be chasing, and you don't need to run crit damage, like I said, because crit damage does not affect your healing output, so it would be a waste to invest in that, even if it would increase your DPS. As far as special skills for your DPS output, so for your healing output, you would run as you see here, which is going to be Invisible Friend, Arcane Resonance, and Book of Answers. And for DPS, you would run Colt and Demon Hound special skills, followed up by most likely Book of Answers or Arcane Resonance or Sharpness of Claw, depending on the length of the fight. So those would be your 3 third slot choices in a DPS situation. So there you have it, that is a complete guide to the Oracle class, and just to remind you, this is going to be still a dual spec class, even though you haven't gotten any new healing skills with the class change 1, you're still going to run this as a dual spec class, and you're going to be swapping back between the pre-class change skills and the class change 1 DPS skills whenever you swap spec. Now, recent changes to the game does make it a bit easier, for example, how your moves are leveled up by the slot instead of per move, etc. So you're going to find an easier time doing quite a lot of things that were a bit harder before the most recent updates. So if you're just getting into the game now and you want to play a healer, you're going to have an easier time than those who've been playing prior to the recent patches. So there you have it. Thanks everyone for watching, and hope you found that useful, and I will see you in the next video. Best of luck. I hope to see many more healers in the game, and take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.